Zero. Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod with Jason Burke. Jason is founder and CEO at the new Primal. He's disrupting a broken food system with delicious low sugar pantry staples made from real food. So it's going to be a fun conversation. His jerky looks quite delicious, and he has other products we're going to talk about as well today. This pod is presented to you by podpire.com. If you want to start your podcast, if you want to scale your podcast, go to podpire.com. Jason, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. Look, I founded the new Primal 12 years ago out of my kitchen. Both of my parents got sick. Both were diagnosed with chronic illnesses because of diet and nutrition. And I just took a real keen interest in food and its impact on our health. And the big takeaway is I wasn't going to start a company. I'd learn how to cook and learn, how to read ingredient labels. And I just so happened to be making like a homemade beef jerky that I would take to my day job with me that would sit in my desk drawer and keep me away from the Snickers bars. And it was the one snack that like I would keep on me that would always disappear, like all my friends stole it from me. And so I basically started making people pay me for it. One thing led to another. You know, I, I I went from one little tabletop dehydrator in my kitchen to six of them, and then I started I rented a little food production space that was like 200 square feet and set up a website. One thing led to another, man, and 12 years later, I sit here with products in about 10,000 stores nationally in the U.S. And I make products across multiple categories. We started with meat snacks. That was the core of what we were doing first, but we expanded our mission over into cooking sauces and dipping sauces, and then dry seasonings, and trying to help elevate people's cooking experience as well as their snacking experience by using real ingredients, taking out the sugar, taking out the allergens and the things that make people feel kind of crappy. And we think there's a pretty big audience for that, so they've responded, and we just put our head down every day and try to continue offering really great value to people, and we've grown every year because of it.
Quite impressive, dude. So 10K store, is that like 100K units per year?
We definitely sell more than 100,000 units a year across. We're probably closer. I mean, we're in the millions of units a year at this point,
Whoa.
depending on the product. Um, but we do business with places like Whole Foods and Sprouts and Wegmans and HEB and Kroger and Publix. Some business at Walmart. And so we do business with the largest grocers in the country. Some of them carry a lot, like Whole Foods carries like 20 of our products, and some of them carry a few, like Publix down in the Southeast carries just two of our products. So the goal is obviously to get places like Publix to carry more, but it just depends on the store and how much they offer. And then we have a pretty robust online presence at Amazon, and particularly for the snack side of our business, a lot of people purchase their meat snacks on Amazon, and it's a really rapidly growing part of what we do.
So you look like a pretty nice guy on the surface, but down below you must be some kind of beast, man. Because I started in CPG 10 years ago, failed flat on my face. This business is super hard. So what's your secret? Hustle, link smart, long, like Jeff Bezos says, or yeah, what's your secret? Like, how did you get in so many stores?
I number one, I think if I have a skill, and I don't consider myself, if I took an IQ test, I'd probably lose to most people. I grew up in government subsidized housing in the U.S. So I grew up in a very poor, low income neighborhood, but I somehow in throughout my schooling experience was put into a school district with very affluent people. And I had this kind of polarization of two worlds growing up, where I lived was pretty impoverished, but I got to go to school 30 minutes away in a very, very affluent neighborhood. And um, essentially, what I learned from that whole experience, well, I learned a lot, but a big takeaway was like it created a drive inside of me. Like I wanted what the kids had that went to the school that I went to. I was like, I want what their parents have. I want those types of houses and that type of lifestyle. And so there was always this like entrepreneurial drive from that experience. Now, when I discovered food as a passion, and and after my parents got sick, it became a little bit more of a crusade for me. So it wasn't just about like, oh, I'm going to go build a business and make money and and try to build something that maybe I can sell to a big CPG company. And it really was like, how do I disrupt a broken system? Because the more and more I was able to dig into the system, the more I realized how broken it is here in the US and how really bad our food is and how bad it is for people. And I thought, man, the only way I know to potentially disrupt that is to go create something that's good and prove that people will vote with their dollars for something that's better and sort of try to get people to react to that. So a couple of things, Charles. One is when we launched our grass-fed beef jerky product, we were the first to market with that type of product. So it was really beneficial to have sort of a first mover advantage of like no one's done anything like this in this category before. So most retailers were very, very receptive to the idea of the innovation that we were offering and it being new to the category, and they would at least give it a shot. So I think that was very helpful to have that first mover advantage. Now, man, we didn't have it for very long. About 6 months later, there were 5 or 6 other companies that had grass-fed beef jerky, and it happened quick. But that was one. And then two, um, man, yeah, I think it's because the crusader in me, and because my parents had gotten sick, and because I, associated that with the food. Like, there's just no quit. Like, I just wasn't going to quit. And certainly to your point, this is a hard business. All business is hard. This one is very, very difficult because my competitors, are multinational, multi-billion dollar organizations with, strongholds on the supply chain and strongholds on their retailer relationships and so forth. And I'm just a little guy trying to break in the door, and I pay the same fees that they pay, and I have the same, advertising requirements that they have. And so it's very expensive. It's very difficult. But I think if you've got a good product that's authentic and people resonate with, like they'll buy it. You just have to convince enough places to give you that shot, so that it's in distribution, so people have access to it. And I think Charles, but the difference between now and 10 years ago, even is the online shopping experience has evolved significantly. And so I think there's a lot of CPG brands have the ability now to create communities online and sell through platforms like Amazon at a much more efficient pace and rate than it is to even go do business in brick and mortar retail. And so I think there's an opportunity for brands to build their business case online before they ever even go in and deal with the costs and the barriers that it might take to get into some of these brick and mortar retail outlets. So I think that's benefited us as well, as the ability to sort of own our own destiny in the online space and create a community around the products that we make.
Obsession on product. Then how did you get into so many stores? What are your outreach strategies? How do you get in touch with these folks, present them the product, and convince them to give you a shot?
Yeah, it's three part. So it's three part. First, for the first year and a half before I quit my job, I would send cold outreach every single day to retailers. So every morning I would wake up before my day job and I would send 30 to 50 emails. Um, and I was doing this very manually. I'm sure there are automated ways to do this now, but I was doing this very manually. I went to like Cliff Bar's website and looked at their store locator. And I looked for all the like independent mom and pop shops that they sold to, all the bike shops and all the, outdoor shops. And I literally just did a bunch of research and created a list of names and people I needed to eat. And I just cold emailed them, hey, here's who I am. I make this product. I think it might be a good fit for your customers. Would you be open to receiving some samples? And that was it. And I had about 50% replied and said, yeah, send me samples. And then from that, about 20, another 50% of those said, we'll give it a shot. And so in the beginning, it was just very manual, one by one, and picking up lots of those smaller independent shops that would just give us a shot. Um, After that, we went to industry trade shows where we could just exhibit with a booth, and where all the retail category managers and buyers come by and you can sample and meet and create relationships. And so we were able to pick up a lot of new distribution distribution from a handful of industry trade shows that we felt gave us a platform. And then, very candidly, we had to then sort of the next tier up was after that, we had to start hiring third party brokers who already had um, really good relationships at certain retail accounts like, Kroger or Publix or Walmart. They're used to doing business with a handful of people. And so you need someone who has like that inside track to at least get you the meeting. And so, the brokers don't guarantee you the business, but they can get you a meeting. And then from there, you just have to have a compelling story to tell. And so for me, I think, again, if there's ever been a strength that I can ever say that, oh, this is an area where I know I'm strong, is I feel really comfortable and confident building authentic and genuine relationships with the partners that we partner with. And that's sort of across the business, vendors, suppliers, retailers, and so forth. And so if you give me a shot to sit down in front of somebody, I'm going to try everything I can to make an authentic, genuine connection and see if there's an opportunity to mutually benefit from our relationship. And I'm also willing to walk away when there's not. So, if we sit down and there's not a connection, there's not like a way that we think we can mutually benefit from each other, like hey, nice to meet you. Stay in touch, and we'll see what happens next. But I think you have to have that compelling story to tell once you do get your foot in the door. So, to summarize, cold outreach in the beginning and really scrappy. And then I went to trade shows, and then I hired brokers. So it was kind of a 1, 2, 3.
Seems you're a freak when it comes to getting all that knowledge and testing it out in this market and seeing the reaction. I'm looking at your content on LinkedIn. It's quite detailed. You're a great thinker. You think critically, and you seem to use content to even think some more and draw more conclusions, get feedback from your audience, and so forth. What are your learning systems?
You know, uh, uh, it's a number of things. One of the learning systems is just product reviews. So when it comes to just like product and what we sell, the reviews tell us a lot. And the customer emails and feedback tell us a lot about how we need to be operating and what we're doing right and what we can improve upon. So that's a big part of it. And so we have to have a system in place to capture reviews and then to be able to monitor those. So that's a huge part of our business today. LinkedIn is a great platform. It's a great platform for me to, again, curate community around what we're doing and then get as much input as I can from my peers and from my consumers. And sometimes my peers are my consumers. And so they're sort of, I get like a 1-2 punch with those. So LinkedIn is a great place to hang out for me personally. And it gives me the ability to do a lot of that. And then, the I have, my internal like leadership team is like my think tank. And so, the ability to just have really strong, confident, smart leaders that I've surrounded myself with. Um, I mean, they're an absolute think tank, and we have a meeting of the minds every single week and sort of unpack the various challenges that we're facing or the various things that are going well and try to build upon whatever momentum might exist. So really, I would say those are the three kind of primary pillars, but there's always, you know, I think I've always been an avid reader. And so, I read every day. It's a huge part of my life. So when it comes to learning, like the system of just simply sitting down and reading 10 to 15 pages a day has been extremely impactful for me throughout my career. And so I combine that with all of the things that we do internally to monitor how the business is performing. And that's kind of it.
Was it lonely in the trenches for 7 years? How did you take care of your mental health?
Very lonely in the trenches, especially because, when I started the business, I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and there just aren't very many CPG businesses in Charleston, South Carolina. So it's not like I'm in Boulder, Colorado, or Austin, Texas, or Chicago or New York, where there are other brands that are starting up, and you have this, you know, other group. But it was very, very lonely. I exercise is one way I stave off sure that um,
Your mic went off, by the way. I'm not sure why. Yeah.
can you hear me now, or is it still off?
Yeah, it's way less high quality, but we can
Hang
continue
on,
that way if
hang
you
on.
want. Yeah.
No, no, let's fix it. What happened?
Let's fix the sure.
Yeah, come on, bro. What happened here? It seems like it's picking up on my little system here. Let's.
So, Jason, you were saying
The
about
trenches
mental
are.
health?
Yeah, the trenches are a lonely place, Charles. They're very
Yeah.
lonely. Yeah, working out has been one way I've staved it off. I mean, if I don't exercise, like it just like I exercise far more for the mental benefits than I do for the physical benefits. And I think we overrate the physical benefits of exercise and underrate the mental benefits. So that's a big part of what I do. I had to hire coaches. I hired people that would help me stay out of my head. And so, I made that investment in myself and made sure that I had access to people who could, help coach me off the ledge, if you will, and keep my mental state in the right place. And then, as I mentioned before about sort of the learning systems, I consider myself a pretty avid reader. And so I'm constantly reading other books of people who have gone the same way. And I love reading like biographies of other entrepreneurs or other people who have done amazing things in their lives. And then I always can always draw inspiration from those kinds of things. But I definitely would say that the exercise and the personal coaches have been extremely impactful throughout my career.
Right. Another of your secret that I diagnosed was the ability to raise capital. You seem to be quite good at this. Any secrets to share with us?
It's one of the most difficult things a founder will do in their career. I don't think there's a secret that's any different than what I described in opening up retail doors. Your ability to tell your story authentically and genuinely, to identify why there might be a mutual benefit in that relationship, and then ask for the close, like ask for the sale. I think a lot of people don't do that. I think people are afraid to ask for the business, if you will. Like no one closes anymore. And so I think the ability to say, hey, do you think there's an opportunity for us to work together? Is there any reason why we wouldn't move forward with this agreement? I think those are questions people are afraid to ask. I think when it comes to raising capital, though, you have to cast a broad net, and I think you need to talk to a lot of people. And so for me, I've talked to hundreds. In fact, the last round of capital that I raised, I was the first time I hired like an investment banker to help me with the process. Before that, everything I had done was within a network. I had built relationships. I had spoken to people who could introduce me to other people, and I never asked them for anything until the time was right to ask them for something. So I just built authentic, genuine relationships, and then when I needed something, I went to them. It didn't feel like it was like, hey, nice to meet you. By the way, would you like to invest? Like, no, I had already built up months of relationships with people before I asked for anything. And so I think that's one critical component to it is like build the network and the relationships way before you think you might need the money. I think that goes a long, long way. But then, as I was mentioning about casting a broad net, when I hired the banker, I could actually see the statistics because I never kept track of it before. And, the outreach was to, let's say, 100 or 150 different, venture capital or private equity firms. And again, you just play the numbers game. I end up on the phone with 15 or 20 of them out of 100 that we reached out to. And then, I took second calls with like 10. And from there, three of them said, hey, we want to work with you. And so, it's just a broad net. And then you get to know like, you get to know a lot of people in that process, and you get to figure out like who might be beneficial to you outside of money. And I think that's another critical component that a lot of entrepreneurs miss is they just look at the money and they go, oh, I just need the money, and so I don't really care. But they've got to bring some other value to the table beyond money, um, that you need. So if you're weak in operations, I would ask questions about their operational expertise. Or if you're weak in marketing, I'd ask some questions about their marketing expertise and who they have access to and who they might be able to connect you with, and maybe who they might be able to identify as another board member that might be able to help guide the business forward. So I think those are some just basic tips and tricks. But I think again, it starts with relationship building. It starts early, and those relationships need to be genuine and authentic, and you need to be able to tell your story and get people enrolled in what you're doing. If you can do that, you can ask for money later, and those people are much, much more prone to give it to you then.
Talking about relationship, it seems that not only did you build company, but you built that relationship with your wife in the meanwhile. You recently had kids. So, any relationships when it comes to any tips when it comes to relationships and parenting?
Oof. Yeah. This is an area I've had to grow significantly. We got married really young, and I had the 100% support of my wife when I quit my day job to go full time into this business. So I think that was absolutely critical. And we stayed in very, very heavy communication throughout the entire process. And we still do. I think, we have a morning routine where we drink coffee together every morning, and we have conversations about the day ahead, about the week ahead, about what's on your mind, and like we just make space every day to keep a very open and honest conversation in our relationship. I think that has been absolutely paramount to my relationship with my wife in building a business, because the day gets very busy, as you know, and you end up, on the phone or on calls or doing meetings or whatever it is, all day long. And if you haven't created and carved out the space for connection with the people who matter the most, then I think that will fall by the wayside. And so we've just been very, very intentional, not perfect, but we've been very, very intentional. Um, about carving out space for genuine connection daily. So that's been a critical component to that. And then the same goes for kids. When we had kids, it was about midway through this building process when our first daughter was born, and I could no longer dedicate late nights to work, or maybe even early mornings, because the early morning I took the baby, and it was like, okay, well, that might have been time I was prospecting or reading or doing something different, so I had to adjust my schedule. So being really flexible and adapting to the changes in life that were occurring, I think that is not a skill set that is natural to everyone. And it wasn't for me. I'm pretty rigid sometimes in my schedule. And if something gets thrown off, it kind of, throws me into a little bit of a tailspin. But I had to learn to become much more adaptable in my career, and in my work and in my relationships. And so that just means that the days looked a little bit different. But I would say that creating intentional space is probably the primary secret to that. And I think that parlays right into the world of business as well. If you've got a leadership team, you have to make sure you carve out and create intentional space for connecting with them. If you've got, key retail customers, key suppliers, key vendors, all the things that you might deal with, I think you have to have just very intentional space where you're connecting authentically, and you guys are sort of, talking about, and maybe not in a very personal way, you're talking about the business, what's next, what's happening. I think the open and honest constant communication is just what is absolutely necessary in maintaining all of this.
Do you picture an exit for yourself in a couple of years? What's the strategy?
Yeah, potentially. I think the goalpost has moved a little bit in our space. A couple of years of, before COVID, I think there was a certain metric that everybody was chasing in terms of top line revenue to at least be in the position for a strategic exit. That metric has moved a little bit further up, and I think that will kind of ebb and flow. Anytime you take on third party capital, private equity, venture capital, that you need to pay those investors a return, and so that typically comes in the form of an exit. So yeah, I think that's on our mind. It's not what we think about first. I think we believe that if we just continue to build a really sound, fundamental business, that continues to grow year over year and has good financial metrics, that the exit or the opportunity for exit or the offers will come in. We don't think about every day like, okay, we got to sell the company in 2 years. So what are the three things we need to do to sell the company? I think we think, what are the things we need to do to serve our customers and to put the company in the best position for success? And I think that those opportunities will present themselves when the time is right. So, I mean, a couple of years from now, I certainly think that we'll be at the place where the financial metrics make a lot of sense for a strategic buyer to want to look at a company like ours. Um, we'll see what the market looks like then, but that, I certainly think, a couple of years out is a very realistic time frame. Yes.
And where can people find out more about you and the company, Jason?
They can follow us on social. It's at the new Primal or at Noble Made. Those are the two brands. Or they can follow me on LinkedIn at Jason Burke. And that's kind of the place we spend the most time. Or just visit the websites. thenewprimal.com will get you everywhere you need to go. And they can, shop, find stores in their local neighborhoods, whatever it might be. We have all of that there. Read the ingredient labels, figure out if there's anything there that might suit their lifestyle.